This episode of This Agile Life has been brought to you by BrilliantAgile.com, providing Agile and Scrum training, consultancy, and personnel.
BrilliantAgile.com. Done right, it's brilliant.
Released on Sunday, February 1st, 2015, This Agile Life, Episode 72, Lawyer's Worst Nightmare.
The software industry transforms more and more every day. Agile methods are quickly replacing traditional ones. The question is, are you agile enough? This podcast is devoted to agile and lean software development. Time to welcome your agile coaches on This Agile Life.
Hello, everyone. I'm the host of This Agile Life, John Sextro. Joining me today are my co-hosts, the one and only Craig Buchek.
Hey, good evening.
I think you're the one and only.
Actually, no, there's another one with the same name.
What does he do?
Not related.
Not related at all.
Mainly doesn't pay his bills.
Whoa, that's a problem for you.
It actually has been, yeah.
We also have with us Jason Tice.
Hi, John. How we doing?
I'm not quite as good as you are. I don't know what happy pills you have, but I would love a few handfuls of them.
Oh, I got them from my MBA friends.
Really? Are they like doctors and pharmacists and stuff?
No, they're called Scrum Masters.
MBAs as Scrum Masters?
Oh yeah, because they like the metrics. All the MBAs want to be able to measure progress.
Okay, I'm not sure I believe you, but we'll go with that. And
That's a topic we should talk about, which is whether Scrum Masters need to have backgrounds in actual development.
That would be nice.
Okay. There's a pivot. Hey, who is that strange person who just gave us that great topic?
Ooh, that strange person is Lee McCauley.
Hey.
How you doing, Lee?
Good. How are you guys?
Wonderiferous.
Lee, we need to call you like the Agile Doctor. The Doctor of
please.
Agile.
No.
We
like
agreed.
The Doctor of Love.
We agreed we wouldn't talk about that anymore. Let's jump in and start talking about something else. So a while back, we asked a few people, actually our whole mailing list. Our mailing list is up to over 200 people now. Wow, thank you all for subscribing to our mail list. And if you'd like to join, you can do that by going to thisagilelife.com and signing up on our opt-in form that pops up. Our first topic tonight has been sent to us by Chris Morgan. Hey, Chris, thanks a lot for being out there listening and for sending us this topic suggestion. His suggestion for a topic is, how much time is considered healthy for an Agile team to spend improving themselves? And he lists a bunch of different axes across which you could improve. The code, which isn't really the team improving themselves, I would say. Coding practices, technical debt, Agile processes, collaboration, quality, and all of these things require time, he says, takes time to improve them. So which of those would you like to start with, Jason Tice?
Well, I want to start with this initial question, which how much time is considered healthy for an Agile team to spend improving themselves? And I'm going to lean forward here and say that I think that that's something the team should do almost continuously.
So just improve themselves all the time. No, don't get any work done.
No, because that's where I think if you are aligning to the values and principles of Agile, you should be doing things to think about improvement as part of your work.
Yeah, but I mean, he's asking how much to take away from work to work on sharpening your saws, as the pragmatic programmers like to say.
Okay, so why don't we go down his list? So code. Okay.
Well, do you want to restate your answer? Or you still want to stick with 100% of your time?
I'm going to say that if I'm working on a team, regardless of what I'm doing, I should be asking myself or asking my pair questions about, are there things I could do to do what I'm doing better?
Yeah, but are you going to do that instead of code, or are you going to do that occasionally while you're coding?
Well, okay, let's take the code as an example. So I suppose we've identified some architectural flaws in our code base. Okay. And so we've had a retrospective. So we had a
retrospective. You took time away from
coding. No.
Coding.
Okay. Okay. As usual, it's me. Complex example. I know these are bad, but let me try.
M-B-A.
Okay.
Three letters.
Hang on.
M-B-A.
So we had a retro. That's a good thing. Okay. The 12th principle of the Agile Manifesto says do something to reflect. So we had a retro. We identified some architectural flaws in our code. We identified some design patterns that we were going to try to use in our code base better. And we wrote them on a big poster and hung it in our team area. And so then if that's up there, what I'm coding on the story, I want to try to be using and learning those.
How much time did that take?
That's saying that I have a reminder and if I'm using that, maybe I need to look at Google. Maybe I need to go to Stack Overflow and get some help.
No. How long did it take you to collect all those insights and write them on sticky notes and whatever else you said you did?
Well, okay. So let me explain where I'm going, because John, I could sit down in my team area, say, you know what? I don't give a darn about what we talked about in the retro, and I'm just going to sling some code and copy and paste it and get a story done. That's not improving. So what I'm saying is, as a member of the team, when I'm working on a story and I'm coding, I have a deliberate focus. I say, hey, as a team, we agreed we want to try to use these design patterns because they'll improve our code base. And so I'm thinking about that personally. I'm asking other people on my team about that. I had called a turnaround to say, hey, I don't understand how to use this design pattern and this as I'm refactoring this. Okay, someone please come help me. So I'm doing those things.
Tice, you're like a lawyer's nightmare. You don't answer the question.
Well, okay, but that's what I'm saying. So I think there is a way you could code and not think about improvement. And what I'm saying here is I would say that there's a way that I'm attempting to describe. You can debate how good I'm doing it, where I'm coding and I'm thinking about improving how I code as I'm actually working on stories.
Okay, but you have to think about the code that you're writing sometimes. You can't think about improving systems, processes, the way you code, the way you collaborate while you're coding very much.
Well, okay. So
you can keep those things in mind, and you can oh yeah, we should probably work on this. But at a certain point, you're going to focus on the code. That's why we pair, so we can focus.
Well, yeah, and again, in truth and advertising, the first thing I did says we had a retrospective. So yes, the team took a break from coding or whatever they were doing, and they went into an area and they had a focused discussion to identify improvement. So we did that. Okay. But I guess what I'm saying is the activity that came out of that retro, then we went to implement it in our regular work activities.
Right. But how long? So let's put it another way. How long do you take focused on team improvement versus focusing on other things while working on improving the team?
See, now that's like a double-ended question too. So oh
my God.
I think the team again.
Focus. Do you understand the word focus?
Yeah, I do.
I think you're overthinking the situation.
Yeah. All right. Can I answer?
Yeah, Craig, you answer. Then we'll talk about your answer.
My answer is between 5% and 25% of your time, and I lean more towards 10 to 20%. And so, if I do 1 hour a day, that's 12%. If I did 2 hours a day, that's 25%. So Google has their 20% time, where you can work on sort of side projects or open source or, improving yourself. That would be, near the maximum. But 1 hour a day seems like a good return on investment. Pretty much you're usually going to have like an hour or two for retrospective per week. Most people probably average, closer to a 1 hour a week or a little less. But so I think the question here is, management sees code as doing work and everything else is not doing work, right? And the trick is to spend your time usefully. Let's say you're spending 10% of your time. If I spend 10% of my time trying to improve myself, trying to sharpen my tools and get better at what I'm doing, if I could make let's say a 1% improvement every week, at the end of a year, I'm going to be, 60% faster than I was before. That would be amazing. If I could spend 10% of my time and get 60% faster or better, think about that compound interest on improving yourself. Go ahead.
Craig, I agree. I think that's great. But I want you to explain a little bit more now. So let's pretend I'm your manager, okay? You're telling me, we've written all these user stories. We got them in the backlog. We got our tech, did all this stuff. And there's a lot of work to do. And you're telling me, in addition to that work, you want 1 hour a day. So if you're working, say, 8 hours a day, a lot of people do that. You want to only really work on the user stories 7 hours a day. And then 1 hour a day, you get to just go do stuff. What are you going to be doing?
Well, I think the manager probably wants me to respond to his emails, and that doesn't even count in your 8 hours, does it?
No, it doesn't. So, okay, so that's fine.
So basically, we could do things to not improve that he's okay with, right?
Well, I guess what I'm asking you, where I'm probing, is to say, what are you doing? I mean, is this like doing code katas, doing some puzzles, like doing some, like it's kind of like, I know in the past we've plugged Code School. Is it like doing stuff like that, like learning on the job?
It could be any of those things.
It's anything to improve. The question is not here from Chris. Chris's question is not, what are the activities that you do to improve? The question is, what's a fair amount of time, or how much is the appropriate amount of time for a team to spend improving? Forget about what the activities are that we're taking to improve.
Well, yeah, but John, understand, if someone's listening to this and they're interested in trying to maybe do this as an experiment, they might have to go to their management or their leadership and say, hey, I would like some time to improve, and here are the things I'm going to do that will help me improve in that time.
Well, you know who's the good person to suggest those things? The person that wants to improve in something. So they'll figure that out.
Okay.
So, I mean, and I brought up the perception. So he says the perception is that doing those things takes the team away from developing new features and slows them down. My argument is it doesn't slow you down in the long term. If I could spend 10% of my time and make a 1% improvement every week, that would pay for itself several times over.
So you make an excellent point, Craig. And this is where I think all people listening need to key into what Craig said. And you're probably going to have to make a similar point. We don't just improve because we want to, pad our resume, right? It can't just be it's a me only thing for improving. If it's just me, then there's less value to the team, there's less value to the company, there's less value to the project. However, if by me working on me and improving can bring some value to the team, then it can bring some value to the project. It can help us. You equated it to helping us go faster, being more efficient, maybe having higher quality code. Then that's something that you can justify and you can sell. And I think the most important thing to think about here with this is, how do you explain it to a product owner, or how do you explain it to your manager to say we should take time to do things to improve ourselves? If you just stop there, we think, yeah, that'd be nice to do, but why should we do that, right? We could be working on features. We could be writing documentation. We could be doing the stories that are on the board. Why should we take time to improve, and how much is an appropriate amount of time to spend on that?
Well, one of the things that he doesn't talk about, that Chris didn't really ask in his question, that of course I'm going to bring up, and then someone who's been quiet will talk about, is I think a lot of times he mentioned go faster, but we're implying a lot about how we measure if the improvements actually provide value. So I think that really says to be able to do this, to have this system where you're improving, you need to have measurements to say, we're going to try doing this, some improvement. How are we going to know if it's working? So Lee, what do you think about that?
I think if you can decide and find out a metric that works for you, absolutely do it. That is the key. You've got to be able to convince management ultimately. So it's nice for us to sit here and talk about, we should be improving all the time. But unless you can actually quantify it, at least at some level, then I don't think management is gonna back you for too long.
Oh my goodness, Lee said we need a metric. Yay!
I'm not sure you need a metric, but you at least need a good case, like a business case, like something an MBA would develop.
Well, and I will say, to Jason's credit, numbers talk.
Yeah, and the one that I'll put this on my pick later, but there's even something like it's called the experiment canvas, or from Toyota, the A3 template, a way that you almost define an experiment. And so in this case, the experiment would be doing something to improve, code katas, whatever you want to do. But in the process of filling out the template, it's like a piece of paper. You have to define a hypothesis, and you also have to define how you're going to measure the outcome. And I think what happens, I see a lot of teams out there that they say they're trying to improve, and they're doing great stuff. They're having retros, they're doing code katas, they're refactoring, they're doing analysis of their code to see how complex it is and trying to make it better. But they don't have enough measurements to know if what they're doing is actually working. So that's I think when people start to get confused, and I'd encourage them to say how, like Lee's saying, figure out how to measure it so you can know if you're on track.
So I like the hypothesis idea, science.
I totally agree with all of that, but I have to say that from being out in the field, it's very hard to come up with really good metrics. I've struggled with this for years, and teams that I've been on have all struggled with this. And some have found things in certain areas that work, and other times it doesn't. A lot of times it doesn't. So despite the fact that we can talk about it, that doesn't mean that it's an easy thing to do. And don't give up just because you find something and it didn't work.
The other problem is, how many variables are there in a development team? How do you know that it was the one variable that you changed versus, the 1,028 others?
So can I ask a question, Lee? Because I think this is an interesting conversation that a lot of people struggle with. Could you give an example? Because I think sometimes, kind of like Craig was challenging me earlier, I think sometimes people overthink just how simple a measurement or an indicator can be. So what's something that you've struggled to measure? Just as an example, if you can think of one.
For example, we've struggled to measure code quality, right? Is our code actually getting better? And so you can do occasionally, if you've got all the right things in place and your team has been around long enough, and you've got a good history, then you might can use bug issues, right? How many of those are you getting? And what are the severities, that kind of thing. But that's something that you have to have a good amount of history with before you can do that, at least easily.
I've got a couple ones that are hard to measure.
Okay.
Collaboration. How do you measure how much you're collaborating? Another one is happiness. How happy is your team? The happiness one is actually a little simpler than you might think to measure. Ask people to just rank, or just say how happy are you from 1 to 10.
Yeah, in collaboration, you listen.
Listen, that's not a metric.
Yeah, but that's not a metric.
Well, okay, it's a feeling, but you can quantify it. Or I have actually I've measured collaboration on teams by actually looking at how they use tools and look for patterns in tools where teams are using the tool as a to replace face-to-face collaboration.
Wait, no.
Well,
like how many kitten?
Is that a negative metric?
Like how many kitten pictures get pasted into Slack every day?
Well, you guys laugh, but that's a real metric, So if you have a team that, and I guess I'll share this as maybe as call it the business side, John. If I'm running a team or I'm investing in a team and I'm investing for that team to work together face to face, and then I go into their tool and I see extensive conversations in the comments feature back and forth between two people that sit next to each other every day, I would question it. That's a metric. If you see that pattern and you can measure that, that's a demonstration you've got a collaboration problem.
Wait,
face to face.
Is that good or bad? So you're saying that's a problem?
Well, I'm going back.
But if you don't sit next to each other and you're actually writing in your ticketing system, that could actually be a good thing. So that's a bit of a tough thing to call a metric.
What I'm saying is you have to look at the context, but a lot of times people don't realize especially with all the tooling these days and all the auditing that most people have to do when they write software, to see who changed what for compliance. There's a lot of data that you can extract valuable insights from.
All right, I think we've gotten a little off the question here.
Yeah, well, but again, I guess the key thing is, and Craig, you even used some great examples when you said happiness. That's easy to measure. You put the color, the card box in your team area, and if you had a good day, you put a green card in. If you had a bad day, you put a red card in. You do it for a week. And in retrospective, you open up the box and you see how many red cards there were. And if there's a lot of red cards, you talk about it and you say what the problem is.
Yeah, well, I like the happiness metric for retrospectives, but I actually had a team where it backfired when people were so disgruntled that they stopped caring and they stopped actually being truthful about their answers about how happy they were.
Well, maybe to end the thread and get us back on track, I'd love to have some really challenging scenarios proposed by listeners of things that they want to measure they don't know how to. Because I think many times I've observed people, again, they try to overthink what they need to measure. And many times it's simple and it's sitting right in front of them.
All right, let's get back to the question. And I don't think John's really chimed in here much. What's a good amount of time for a team to spend on self-improvement?
I would go with 4 or 5 hours a week.
That's about what I was at, which is about 10 to 12%.
And I think, the majority of that is probably organized. And then reverse that. The minority of that is some sort of organized retrospective. And then the other 70% of that time being spent on things like you were mentioning, Craig, where it's an independent improvement. You're working on, you're maybe doing some exploration on a tool that you guys are planning to use, and you're going to work on learning some about that ahead of time. Maybe even answering questions on Stack Overflow, or reading questions on Stack Overflow, or things like that to keep your saw sharpened. I really like that metaphor.
So one thing that I do is throughout the day, I'll notice something that bothers me with my IDE or my text editor or my browser or something, and I'll make a note of it. And at the end of the day, when there's some slack time, if my pair leaves, a little bit earlier, half an hour earlier, say, than I do, or something like that, or someone goes and reads some email, and I've got some alone time, I'll actually go to my list and work on fixing that and configuring my text editor to bind a keystroke or something like that to just make myself just a little bit faster.
If you'd stop using Emacs, it would be easier.
I stopped using Emacs about 10 years ago. I'd like to try to start again. So Vim is really configurable and has terrible defaults too. So
you could use my IDE. It's called Microsoft Word.
Okay.
I thought you coded in
I hope
PowerPoint.
he's joking.
No, I code on
he
a
is an
bunch
MBA.
of cards. Okay, John, I got a question. I got a real life for you here. I appreciate what you and Craig are saying because, you're motivated, you're involved, you're on the team. I'm on your team. I'm apathetic. I don't care. And I say, hey, I get an hour. I'm checking out. I'm going to work on my fantasy sports. I'm going to go on Facebook. I'm going to space out. I'm just going to sit in the corner and stare at the wall.
Is that actually going to help you?
Well, what I'm saying is,
or are you just a jerk?
Well, okay, I'm a jerk, but I'm on your team.
Agile can't help that.
Well, but real life, people have this out there. So
I didn't say it can't be solved. I said Agile can't help that.
Okay, but that's so. Put it this way, that's why management has a lot of criticism, and they challenge this practice of providing teams autonomy to go do this, because there are a lot of people out there that do abuse the system or abuse the privilege. And so what do we do about that? Because I think that's where this breaks down. And because what I see here in Chris's question, he's like looking for an entitlement to say that, yes, as a team, we get 10 hours a week or whatever the number is to go do this stuff. And that's a course correction from basically not being given autonomy to do what he thinks is right on his team.
So let me get this straight. You want to treat your employees like children and you're going to complain when they act like children.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, I think, again, what we're saying is best case, but in real life out there, I think there are people that abuse the system. So what do we do about that?
So you let them within the boundaries of what the business can absorb, which it shouldn't have to be very, very much, because I think most people in our business, in our line of business, are going to want to improve themselves. They're going to do something. And so, yeah, you might have one person in 10 that's going to be a slacker and not use that. And I think it's just the nature of what you're letting them do. And okay, they're going to slack.
So,
Eat it.
So we've talked about mastery, autonomy, and purpose, right, as being motivators. So if you take away autonomy, that's not going to help. If you take away their time to gain it, to improve at mastery, that's not going to help.
You know what?
I don't know how purpose fits in here, but
hey, Craig, you know what I would do?
You don't? Do you not know? Because it does fit in.
Go ahead.
It's the role of leadership, really, to establish a precedent that the purpose of people is to improve, and they want people to do that, and that's how the leadership triangle stays intact. Because really, what happens if you have the person that's not really leveraging that benefit, they're not doing what leadership wants.
Here's what I think a good Agile team would do to deal with a personality such as the one that Jason has described, that instead of using the time effectively, this time that we've been allotted to work on self-improvement, instead of using that time effectively, he's playing games on his phone or reading silly things on Reddit, looking up kitten pictures, etc. I would speak with Craig, somebody that I knew was using the time effectively, and I'd say, hey, Craig, I've noticed that Jason is not using our self-improvement time effectively. Have you noticed that? And Craig would tell me, yeah, I noticed it as well. And I would say, how would you feel about joining me and having a discussion with Jason about using his time more effectively during our self-improvement sessions? Because if he continues down this path, he's going to ruin it for all of us.
So who are you asking, Craig or me?
No, I'm not asking anyone. I'm just
saying you would do that.
I'm
you
providing you with a way to fix the person that is, because that's what happens, right? One bad apple spoils the bunch is the quote there, and in the example that you were using yourself to exemplify, you were being the bad apple, and if we continue to let you remain as the bad apple, you will ruin it for us in the eyes of management. So I'll use the whole team approach, and I'll maybe even not the whole team approach, but this idea of self-organization to get together with some of my fellow team members and take you out behind the woodshed and beat the shit out of you.
No. well,
it follows my suggestion of go to the person first if that's a feasible option before you go to management. And address it.
Well, and to be respectful of the topic here, I think we've done, at least 3 episodes on confronting team members. So I think we don't need to go through that anymore. We can look those up, or people can look those up at the archive. So,
well, you keep bringing up all of these corner cases and edge cases of what if this person's doing that and that person's doing this.
Well, because that's real life, though. So.
All right. What was Lee's answer to this question? What are your feelings on the amount of time people should spend on this?
I'm not sure if I fit somewhere in between you guys. I understand what Jason was trying to say at the beginning.
Oh, good. Say it better. Say it better than for me. I'm obviously not.
Well, I'm going to attempt to say it again. I won't say it better, but I think what he's talking about, is that people should be, if we're pairing, for example, we're always kind of improving. That's one of the things we kind of do naturally It's not like I can quantify the amount of time I spent improving if I'm learning something while sitting next to somebody and they're showing me something, right? That just happens to be also getting code done, or just discussing an architectural issue or whatever. We're working at the same time, but we're also improving. And but I don't think that really goes to, and this is what John and Craig are talking about. It doesn't really go to the meat of what the question was intended to ask about. But I do think you can choose practices and choose processes that allow you to improve the entire time, as Jason is trying to suggest. So let's get back to what the exact amount is going to be. I have no freaking clue.
It might vary among teams.
Hey, there's
Exactly.
the lawyer in the group over there, because there's the undefendable answer, Craig.
He was actually concise about it and came right out and said, "I don't know," instead of spending half an hour.
So here's a question then. This is to be kind of it's about all these things that Chris mentioned in his question to us. What do you think of a team where, if you suppose you have like John, you're a coach, okay? So you go and work with a team and you ask the team, "Hey guys, what are you trying to improve right now?" And you get like, like nothing. Like, we're just doing our work. Is that a problem?
It could be. It sounds like it probably is, just purely by the fact that they don't have anything at all that they could point to say this, this iteration, we are going to work on improving our commit rate, and we want to do better at having branches and commit more frequently or something, right?
Yeah.
It would, to me, that would be a leading indicator that there is probably an issue on the team.
Maybe they're just not self-aware enough, though.
Self-aware in terms of what are they working on improving?
Yeah.
Then they're not working on anything to improve.
Well,
because you have to be aware of it to be. There are things, to Lee's point, there are things that you happen to accidentally trip and, I got better at that because I paired with Craig. That's great, and congratulations, gold star for you. But what Chris is talking about and asking about are those formal times where you're making a conscious effort to do better with code quality, to do better with technical debt, to improve your agile process, to improve your collaboration. Not you fell ass backwards into something and got lucky and got better at it.
Yeah, I guess if you're spending time specifically on something, you better damn well know what you're spending that time on.
So I guess, John, you're kind of saying, really, if a team is reflecting, as we've already said, is something they should do, the recommendation would be that a team should be able to say, "Hey, here's what we're trying to improve," and it's not a lot of things, because maybe it's small experiments, but they're trying to improve something. Yes,
they have clearly identified at least one thing that they're trying to improve.
Yeah. Well, and the thing I like about that, to kind of, go back to other threads we've kind of chunked down into, is to say that then that to me starts the conversation with leadership to say, hey, we're going to take an hour each day, as you guys are saying, and we're going to do some learning, some reading, some work about that. So it almost promotes the whole team approach, because something I've actually also seen is I've seen teams where, they have the 1 hour rule, as you guys are talking, but it's people just go focus on what they want to focus on independently, which is great, but it doesn't really align to what the team's trying to do. So I like the idea of saying the team has a goal of what they want to get better, and then everyone has a focus, or they have some time to kind of make a contribution towards that.
Or it could just be that the team is high performing, and so they're not working on improving their agile process. They're not cleaning up any technical debt, but they could decide as a team that they're going to spend some of their self-improvement dollars, if you will, on learning a new technology or playing with something like Docker or Cloud Foundry, Jason, like you were talking about before, or expanding their horizons, right? So it doesn't have to be that it's completely focused on internal things for the team or processes for the team. It could be growing as individuals to make themselves more valuable to the organization. And again, we have to focus on doing these things because it's a win-win for everybody. It's a win for you because you're improving in some way, and that has to be good. It's a win for the team, the project, and the company because it's an improvement that is going to make that team and project better, and ultimately the company in the long run.
So that could be reading up on a new Agile technique, reading some blogs about the programming language you're using or techniques in general. I spend many hours a day, some during work time, so more outside of work, reading those blogs, following people on Twitter and clicking on links to those kinds of blogs.
Any other advice for Chris on how much time to spend on self-improvement?
Well, I got one final question about kind of mechanics. And I guess, Craig, since you and John both say you do this hour a day thing, how have you done it? Like I've actually worked with a team where they took a learning break and everyone stopped working for like a half hour. They all, kind of did katas or they read blogs, and literally the team stopped. It was interesting. It was a unique environment where we were allowed to do that. Have you ever had anything like that, or how have you seen this work? Because I'm trying to think how this could go. Hey, I want to go work on this. No, I want to work on the story, and you're both trying to figure that out.
I tend to do it in Slack time, and I tend to do it not as a formal thing and not necessarily as a asked to do thing, but just, ask for forgiveness instead of permission. But it's usually in the Slack time that you'd be screwing around anyway, when you don't have a pair and you're reading emails and you're, okay, I finished my email. Now what do I do? Well, I get to work on something, but I'm not going to focus on it.
That's an opportunity
it's
for
the end of the day.
Kanban.
It's the beginning of the day. Well, but maybe that personal Kanban is, reading up on things that I wanted to learn. So, I don't need a Kanban for those kinds of things.
But you know what? Actually, I would say you do, because if you do and you keep a log of that, that's a really good thing to reflect on. I had a team once where we had what we called science fair, which was like every Wednesday afternoon, where people had time to go learn and do stuff. And we had some spikes that were officially on the board that we were doing for our product that we had to figure out. But some people were just gung ho that they would hack stuff up at night on their own time. And so every Wednesday afternoon, we had a 1 hour science fair where each person had like 10 minutes to give a lightning talk to other people on the team about what they had learned. And we went around the room and everyone did their little lightning talk. It was fun. And it was in addition to our retro. So that was another hour there. But most of the work that people did to get ready for that science fair was pretty much done on their own. So it was a neat thing.
And I'll clarify here for Jason, back to the question that you asked initially about formally using that time, that I've never worked with a team that has said, I'm going to have from the hours of X to Y in which I can do self-improvement. What I have seen and what I have coached with teams is that you're overall deciding as a group, we want to, let's say, I'm going to go back to the code commits and code check-in thing. They want to get better at committing code in smaller increments. So the time that they're going to spend then is the additional time that they have to think about that, talk about that with their pair, or talk about that with the team and ask other people, do you think that this is a small enough commit? Is it too small? Is it too big? That's the time that they're spending improving, and it's less about formally saying, I'm going to close the IDE down for a while and I'm going to read this blog, or I'm going to read a chapter in this book. And it's more about just taking extra time as you're doing your normal job to be more intentional about the improvement that you want to make. If you want to improve with writing tests, you spend more time focusing on writing well-written quality tests. So you take extra time to get yourself better at doing that ability or that activity, and it slows down your ability to churn out stories and features. But again, that's that improvement time that you've said, okay, yes, we're going to use some amount of time throughout the sprint for improvement.
Hey, John, are you doing that experiment right now, like trying to get smaller commits?
No.
Oh.
No, it would just, I don't know why that popped into my brain.
I would just say, because that would be I would love to see someone do that. I'll say this to the listeners, try this experiment that John wants to do with smaller commits and set it up so you can measure the time elapsed between commits and the number of lines in each commit. And that would be a fascinating ratio to plot over time to see how you're doing. Because your goal would be you want to see the trend line go down of the ratio.
I kind of picked that one because I like small commits and I do that myself, but it's also something that you can quantify. You can automate the collection of that information.
Yeah, and you can plot it, which would be really awesome to see. It'd be a really cool. So again, there's a quantitative metric that you can easily compute to make an experiment understandable.
So I selected that example in defense of some open-ended MBA style question that I could have perceived maybe getting from Jason Tice at some point during.
Well, trust me, I'm the biggest advocate for the happiness metric, even with all my MBA buddies, to say and it's funny, they're warming up to it, to say that there's a lot of, they're finally learning about happiness and play and keeping people engaged at work. And they say, you know what, we should measure that. And they think it's kind of funny to do the red card, yellow card, the color card thing with red cards and green cards, but they do agree it works. So
I would like to ask Craig a question about the happiness card, the happiness measurement activity, because some friends of mine happen to work on a non-agile team, but they have a process that is, it's not agile, but they have kind of a stand-up meeting every morning, and they actually have to self-rate their happiness. But there's nothing demonstrable that happens if you say frowny face or smiley face, and they have like a scale of, frowny face to happy face sort of thing. So they fit in, it's a 1 if it's the total frowny face and 5 if it's the total happy face. So what should we do, or what could we do with that information?
So when it was going down, we tried to talk about some things that had made it go down, but day to day would be tough. We did it every week or maybe every other week, but I can't imagine day to day taking that day to day.
It's funny. I know multiple groups that have done it, including groups that I've encouraged, but also groups that just did it. And they'll do it either, like I said, with the cards, or they'll do it. A lot of people set up like a quick online survey where you could just take it every day and you just anonymously rate yourself, and then you have the data to discuss. And so it's fascinating.
So do you compare individuals against themselves as well?
The way that I've done it is,
and are they anonymous?
The way I do it, it's team based, so it's anonymous. But the cool thing about most of I'll share the online survey tools, since they record the time and everyone votes typically at the end of the day, you can actually plot a histogram through the week of, the days when it was really awesome and the day when it was really bad. And it's interesting then to have, again, take that into a retro and throw the histogram up, and you say, hey, let's talk about what happened this week. And well, why was Wednesday really bad? Oh, Wednesday's our demo. And every time we go to do a demo, it's like a last minute mad dash to get ready to get everything actually loaded to the demo server. And it's been that way for 3 weeks. So if you have data, to me, that's a conversation to say, let's challenge ourselves to do better and say, what are we going to get out of this retro, so that our goal next week and our hypothesis is that we want to have less red marks on our Wednesday when we're getting ready for our demo.
Jason, I think that's a good idea, that histogram approach that you mentioned for teams. Remember Dr. Greenway from Agile Games? What's his first name?
Roger.
Dr. Roger Greenway. He had us do an exercise similar to that, but he had us do it as individuals. So he would pair you off, and then he would give you a length of rope, and he would have
the rope histogram,
use the rope on the floor on a table to make a histogram of your past week or 2 weeks or whatever it was. And then what he encouraged the partner to do is make observations of your rope and say, it looks like you were pretty low this day. What went on that day? Tell me a story about that. And then you would engage in a conversation with your partner to talk about how you maybe could deal with that, improve that. But something for me personally is that I think I even have a histogram throughout the day, right? I mean, I might be really crabby in the morning because the kids were a pain in the butt getting them to school, or I had a rough, I didn't get enough caffeine yet. I mean, mine goes up and down, I think, throughout the day. So
sleep or back pain, or there's all kinds of things that be outside of work.
Well, and to be fair, what we're talking about here, this is relevant for Agile, but it's also it's really just being, I want to say, elements of a feedback culture, where you're thinking about being courteous and hospitable to others. A great example, I need to find the picture. I know as you guys know from recent episodes, I have a kindergartner, and they do a thing in their PE class when they leave the gym. They've got a big poster where they talk about sportsmanship, and it's got like, I cheated, and it's got like, I was a good sport, and it's got like 5 levels. And as they go out the door, everyone high fives the chart on where they were, and people can see that. So it's kind of like to say, hey, I really want to hit the top spot, but at the same time, I wasn't nice to people, so I can't hit the top spot. So this idea of evaluating this is really good, and it's all over the place. So I would say it's something that people need to think about doing more of.
That'd be another fun sort of thing to do, where you're dropping a card in a box at the end of the day as you walk out. I had a really great day, or I didn't, it's that sort of thing. Yeah,
that's the card thing. The only problem is if you do that, you really can't then do this histogram. And to me, the histogram, again, if you're struggling with having good retros on your team, take this as we're saying it. Set up a simple survey where every day people can rate the day on a 1 to 5 scale and ask the team to do it anonymously. And then if you pull that data up for about a week in your retro, you will have a great retro guaranteed. And that's all you need to get started.
All right, I'm going to try and summarize Chris's question, or I'm going to try and summarize what the advice that we have provided on Chris's question about the amount of time to spend as a team on improvement as an overall team. First, I think one of the things that we said was that you should be transparent. Everyone who's involved with the team, stakeholders, management, should understand that the team is spending some amount of time doing improvement. Then secondly, I think that you should agree as a team on what it is you're going to spend your time on to improve. And you should have some justification for why you need to spend that time improving, and make sure that there's some sort of value attached to that, so that everyone is clear that having this and making these changes is going to add value. And we mentioned using the scientific approach, where you come up with some sort of suggestion that has a hypothesis as to how it will improve the team, and gives you some way to measure that and say, did we improve or didn't we improve at a future point in time, maybe a retrospective where you're looking back and thinking about how that improvement went.
This week's hottest picks.
Lee, you're up first with your pick this episode.
Well, for Christmas this year, I got a great book that I want to plug. And a lot of people probably have heard of this guy. His name is Randall Munroe, and he's the creator of the XKCD webcomic. And he wrote a book called What If? Little known to some people that along with doing the XKCD comic, Randall also does this blog where people can post what if questions that are really some strange sort of questions, but he takes them and comes up with really scientific answers to those things. So just if you want some inspiration for taking the scientific approach for coming up with new things, just the fact of all of the data that Randall puts together and comes up with to answer some of these questions is really amazing. And so you should check it out. It's humorous, but it's also, you learn a lot of trivia there. So for example, did you know that the Richter scale actually has negative values? I didn't know that.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
What?
It has, yes. So a 1 is just how much is a particular level of the Earth moving, but a -1 still has value. It's something like the entire Dallas Cowboys front line running headfirst into your garage. I think that was the example he used.
Lee, a better example would be, again, when Amos belches on This Agile Life. There's a negative one for you.
No, that's more like a negative 10. So
poor Amos.
Yeah. Okay, maybe a 5 if it's a really good one. Anyway, this is a great book. Check it out. I thought it was a lot of fun.
It sounds like a lot of fun. I can't wait to take a look at that and see some of that. It really is amazing how much effort that Randall must have to put into answering those what if questions.
Well, it wasn't number one, like, what if I threw a baseball at 90% of the speed of light and it like basically blew up the whole city that the stadium was located in because it, colliding with the air at that speed is just something that big colliding with air at that speed is just so much energy. It's ridiculous.
Yes, but he goes into excruciating detail into exactly what happens every microsecond. And,
there's another one where it's what if there was a planet, like if we covered the moon in mice or something, and it's like, well, they'd compress themselves and you'd have one big hairy mass. It's like,
right.
He takes everything to the extreme. It's so hilarious.
Yep. It was pretty cool. He also has a TED talk there where he talks about the one with the throwing the baseball.
Good pick, Lee. Thanks. Jason, what do you have for us?
I think that might be the world record for the longest pick ever.
Oh, no, you hold that.
No, I have like 10, but they're shorter. So I only have two. I only have two to speak since the theme of all my picks are always like conferences. So I got a spin on conferences this week. This Agile Life super fan, Joe Barnes, he's actually speaking at UberConf in July 2015 in Denver on Scala and JavaScript. So go check Joe out. He listens to the podcast and is a great guy. And you can ask him lots of crazy questions about why he likes This Agile Life. So check him out in July in Denver.
I thought we were supposed to have a Joe Barnes free podcast this week.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was last week. And,
okay.
And last week, if you know for our listeners, the podcast assurance project failed. So,
oh no.
Yeah. So the other one we're plugging This Agile Life video, which I've been experimenting with. I've learned a lot about how to record ultra widescreen multi-channel video out of Skype and then how to compress it down to something that is postable on YouTube. And what that means is all of you, if you ever want to see what this looks like in real life, you can watch it now. So we've got some links out there for episode 71, which was our most recent, our episode prior to this episode. And then this episode 72. So if you watch the video things, you'll see Craig's cat walking around with his microphone. You'll see me doing the thing like O'Reilly does with the pen, pointing at John. You'll see John going crazy to punch me because he doesn't like NBA. So the video is actually is entertaining. So you don't have to listen to the whole thing. Just pull it up and forward to some random spot and just start watching it. And I think you'll get some entertainment value out of it. And of course, when Amos shows up, you can always see what beer he's drinking at night. So anyway, so check our videos out there on YouTube. And those are my hottest picks, John. That's it. Done.
Thank you for your hottest picks. And I think what we've proven is that the only way to have a Joe Barnes free episode is just not to record.
Oh,
fair enough.
Because
that's also the only way not to have any bugs in your code, right? You just don't write any.
Yes.
Boom.
Okay, I'm going to do a shameless plug along the lines of conferences. Jason was mentioning Joe Barnes speaking at UberConf in July. I'm going to be speaking at Agile and Beyond, the 2015 variety, since it's this year, up at Dearborn, Michigan, in April. So I've got a link to that conference in the show notes, and tickets are still available. So if you are in and around the Dearborn, Michigan area, and you'd like to come and hear me talk and say hi, sign up for that conference.
See John Show. See John Show.
Oh boy,
he's so disturbing sometimes. Okay,
most of the time.
Craig, what are your hottest picks this episode?
All right, the first one is a blog entry by Amy Hoy, and I didn't realize it's over 2 years old, from 2012. It's called "Why Blacksmiths Are Better at Startups Than You," and it talks about basically how we learn skills. And so blacksmith is a skill that just it's a craft, and it takes a lot of time to learn, and you'll be really bad at it for a long time. And modern Americans are bad at that. They don't know how to deal with that, and they get all huffy, like, well, I should be making faster progress than this, and they just don't know how to deal with it. And this talks about the differences and how we can learn from those differences between those mastercrafts and the things we normally do. The second one is called Why Numbering Should Start at 1. And I've been playing around with programming language design and made it one of my my New Year's resolutions to work on my programming language this year more. And so one of the questions is, should array indexes start at 0 or should they start at 1? And most languages, I don't know when it started, but I know C at least is very 0 based, and most languages are deriving from C, and Perl and Ruby and all the ones that sort of derived along that lineage are 0 based. But I believe there's a couple that are 1 based, and I think Pascal was 1 based, and I believe Smalltalk was 1 based. And so I'm trying to figure out which one I should choose. Should I choose what everyone else has chosen pretty much, or should I choose the thing that maybe makes a little more sense in this day and age? Like, especially if I have array dot first, should that be the same as array square bracket 0? That seems weird to me. So just a thought to think about, why do we start at 0, and is that still a valid reason now?
I can almost bet that there's like reams and reams and reams of documents that have been written explaining why it's important that it start at 0.
Dijkstra has an argument on it, and it's not very good when I go and look at it.
I'll give you one.
He's got a link to that in this.
I'll give you one reason not to do it, because Visual Basic used to start their numbering at 1.
I've been offered the suggestion to compromise and use 0.5, but I don't know if that's a good answer.
Perfect. That's it. That's the solution right there.
Another one is to allow the user to change it, and that's probably even worse than 0.5.
Oh, yikes. Definitely. Good picks, guys. Thanks a lot. All right, that's all we have time for today. Check out thisagilelife.com for these show notes. And while you're out there, you can sign up for our newsletter. Just give us your email address. We'll send you our top 10 Agile resources. Those are not people, just so we're all clear. You'll get those delivered very speedily to you in your email, and then you'll be able to get emails from us in the future. We'd love to have you send us email and let us know if you have any suggestions for the show. Thanks for listening, and keep living this Agile life.
This Agile Life is brought to you by a community of Agile developers and coaches aspiring to spread the word about this groundbreaking approach to software development. Join us at thisagilelife.com/community.